All right, so today is day 4 of our hormone challenge. This is where we pull all the information together. We say we connect your clocks, and we have a special surprise for you in terms of the point system and all the encouragement, all the sharing of stories, all your questions. So we'll be announcing what those prizes are at the end of today. And but just know, keep your comments coming, keep your questions coming to us. Even if you're watching this recording afterwards, we will be answering those questions, sharing them. And so it's really great to see that continued community at work. Today, we will be covering your key metabolism hormones, including thyroid, insulin, cortisol, while sharing how they contribute to your overall wellness, which is the primary goal, and also to your weight loss. We will touch on the importance of your main detoxification organ, your liver, how it plays into your hormone metabolism, weight optimization, and just your overall wellness.
And we have covered so much great kind of foundational information leading into today. So our goal for today is that we're going to build on that knowledge and then bring it all together, showing you exactly how to assess your hormones and those rhythms that we've been talking about. And then we also want to share, so that you can leave today with an action plan.
And a reminder, this is for information purposes only. We love speaking with you privately so that we can personalize this information, really understand your hormone aspects, and really make sure you are taking this information and applying it correctly. But we hope we're giving you lead-in conversation topics to ask us more about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and please ask your questions as well, like throughout this presentation. If you're watching it after, you can just put them into Facebook group and we'll answer them there, or email us. So these are the guiding questions that we are going to be covering today. We're going to cover what is your TSH sweet spot for metabolism. You're going to learn how to regulate your cortisol in the most stressful of times to find calm in the chaos for weight loss. We're going to talk about how to optimize liver health for hormone balance and weight loss from a naturopathic perspective. We're going to dive into how does DHEA and testosterone facilitate weight loss, and what if you're too low in these important metabolic markers. And we're going to talk about estrogen metabolism, how that's impacting your body composition and your weight. And then we're also going to show you how to assess hormones with a couple of live cases.
The first thing we're talking about today is your thyroid. And many of you know your thyroid is important to your metabolism. That's a key question we have when people come in, expanding on their weight loss goals. They're sure there's something wrong with their thyroid. They go to their doctor and my doctor says my thyroid is fine. And so naturopathically, we look at your thyroid function a little bit differently. And so that's what we're sharing with you right now. First off, it's important to know what is the thyroid marker we're looking at. So it's TSH. And there's more markers, but the main one is TSH. It stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. Your thyroids impact your metabolism, your body temperature, your energy, even your mood. And so when we look at your TSH level, a high level is when you're getting above 2, that's like 3, 4, you're moving to the slower side. So we call that more hypothyroid. And then if you're below 1, that is on the faster side. And so the optimal sweet spot range of your TSH is 1 to 2. And then the markers that we're looking at in a full blood panel would be your TSH, your thyroid antibodies, your free T3, free T4, and then sorry.
So yeah, what we were covering there is we wanted to know too, I don't know if you guys can share in the chat if you know what your TSH level is, if anyone happens to know what that is. And going back to the whole metabolism of the thyroid hormone. So that TSH hormone that we're looking at, that thyroid stimulating hormone, like that's coming from the brain, which is then talking to the thyroid. So the thyroid is then producing those T3 and T4 hormones. T3 is the more active one. So there's a whole cascade there that becomes really important. So everything's kind of starting in the brain, and then it's going down to the thyroid, and then things are metabolizing through the gut and the liver. So it's so much more than just your TSH, but your TSH is often a starting point there. So we do want you to encourage you to know your TSH level. And then the point there with the hypothyroid and hyperthyroid is just that the thyroid can go in either direction. So typically when it's hypothyroid, it's under functioning, and that's when you might feel tired, sluggish, and the weight gain can happen, slower metabolism. Hyperthyroid is an over functioning thyroid gland. So it's there might be weight loss, diarrhea, like things feeling hot, things are just going in the opposite direction.
And so we see some comments coming through of different TSH levels.
Yeah.
So 1.6, a few 3.5. And so knowing your number, your TSH number is the first step. And then if that's looking good, but you know there's still something off, looking at your T3 and T4 can be added. And I always love looking at thyroid antibodies when we're curious about something and when we're wanting to know how stress is affecting the body. So when thyroid antibodies are rising, that is an indication of stress on the body. So it's a really good marker that's often missed. And in certain cases, we feel it should be tested.
And then, okay, so this is going into the liver and lymphatics. So our liver, so that's our main kind of detoxification organ, and that's where all hormones and toxins, and that includes toxins include things that, we're exposed to in our environment. There's chemicals and cleaning products, things like that. But even how we talked about, I don't know if this was maybe yesterday, I don't know, the days are blending into one, but about how cells, even in their normal metabolic processes, they're going to produce toxins. So there's a bunch of ways that we're producing those, but their liver is the main organ that's metabolizing both of these hormones and toxins, and then helping to clear them. So along with the lymphatics. So that's why proper functioning of the liver is so important for hormone balance and to support your overall metabolism, because things can get really sluggish if the liver is getting really bogged down. There's lots of kind of naturopathic tools, even foods and things like that we've touched on here, that are really great for really giving your liver some love and just helping with that optimal functioning. So things like lemon water, greens, bitters, fiber is there too, because fiber helps to remove the bile that's produced from liver through our through our body, which contains a lot of the toxins. Turmeric is a really great liver loving herb. Do you have any other liver loving? Yeah.
So many things. There's two phases of your liver detoxification, and certain things will augment one phase over the other. And so that's getting a little bit more technical, but we do assess for that. And lymphatics is really important to bring into any metabolic program. And there are 3 easy things you can do to support your lymphatics. And just backtracking, lymphatics are your garbage disposal system in a way, just taking all the debris, any toxins, anything, and helping your body clear it through digestive processes. We want to activate your lymphatics. And Dr. Kira, what's your favorite way to do this for an easy home practice?
Ooh, my favorite is definitely a hot cold shower. Maybe not my favorite while I'm doing it, although I've done it so much that now I actually love doing it. So I do I do usually a minute hot and then 30 seconds cold, and rotate that a few times, and then finish with cold. And that hot cold flush really gets the lymphatics moving. Mm-hmm. What about you?
I love those too. It's true. Once you do them, it becomes addictive. It's the new craving to get that cold blast out. And you feel refreshed afterwards. I love pairing that with dry skin brushing right before you get in the shower or anytime. And so even if you don't have a dry skin brush, it's easy to get online at a health food store or health pharmacy. Even taking a dry face cloth and brushing so lymphatics pump it up to the heart. Your heart pumps out to the organ systems and where you need the nutrients, but your lymphatics pump towards the heart. So you would take your face cloth or your brush and start at your wrists, moving up to your heart, start at your ankles, moving up. So bring everything back to your core so that it can pump out as well. So that's creating lymphatic movement. You would do that for even 30 seconds before your shower. But the longer you do, the better. And some people say doing that dry skin brushing actually helps to clear cellulite. And it's just that creating movement and moving things so they're not stagnant. That's the why it's helping. So lymphatic dry skin brushing, hot cold showers for wellness, not for cellulite, just getting that movement going. And then a third thing would be movement. getting your lymphatics. And so we have a favorite tool that we use for this. And so share with us, Kira, what.
You just cut out on me, so I don't know exactly what you said.
Oh, I cut out. Okay. Just getting into our favorite tool to that you can have at home to stimulate your lymphatics would be jumping. And
oh yeah, or walking. Well, because the thing with lymphatics is they don't have the like the cardiovascular system that has a pump through it that pumps it through, like the lymphatic system doesn't. So that's why movement, so jumping, like if you had a rebounder, I mean, not everyone has a rebounder at home, but like that action, just jumping. Yeah, but that really helps to get the lymph going.
Or shaking, like shaking everything around. Dancing. So love your liver and your lymphatics for your metabolism, and it helps. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I need to do a liver detox as part of a cleanse. But here's why. It's helping with your hormone balance, your hormone clearance, your thyroid activation. So it's really important, and you can do it in simple ways, not a bottle of a liver cleanse. Mm-hmm. Cortisol, number 2. So this is your fight or flight hormone, as you know. So when you're stressed, you'll increase your production of cortisol. And then when you're resting and calming, you decrease your cortisol production. We have an AM and PM aspect or a cortisol curve aspect to our cortisol production. So that's why when you're getting blood testing of cortisol, you need to know what time you tested. So are you testing your AM cortisol or your midday or your PM? And just remember that when you first wake in the morning, that's when you want your cortisol to be the highest. And then as it comes down throughout the day, it gets lower, and you want it to stay low at night so you can get that really good quality of sleep. We don't want a spiking of cortisol right before bed, and food would spike that, and stress will spike it. And then we want you to be able to have a good restorative sleep so that you can wake in the morning and make enough cortisol. So when people are feeling tired and sluggish on that AM, it has to do in part with this AM PM cortisol curve regulation.
Mm-hmm. And cortisol, so kind of tying it to our metabolism and weight conversation, is that cortisol is in a class of hormones called glucocorticoids. So basically what that means is that it increases our blood glucose levels, which can then encourage fat storage. So it is like we're designed to have cortisol, it peaks at a time when we're stressed and then it comes back down. But the problem is the way that we're living these days is that chronic elevation can then cause these issues. It's also categorized as a catabolic hormone compared to an anabolic. An anabolic would be building, but a catabolic breaks down. So chronic cortisol over time can break down lean muscle mass, which we know is not good from like a strength perspective or anything like that, but even just from a metabolism perspective, and the fact that we need that lean muscle mass for so many reasons. So it has more of that catabolic action over time.
Right. So, and remember yesterday we were talking about muscle mass and resistance training speeding your metabolism. So you don't want to be breaking down your muscle mass too much. You want that fine balance of cortisol production. Also remembering cortisol is a natural anti-inflammatory hormone. So when we are exposed to stress, we increase our cortisol production. Stress can be from mental stress or physical stress or environmental stress. So think physical stress and injury. That's creating inflammation in your body. You will raise cortisol to put out that fire and help with the injury healing. And so we want to be able to make cortisol when needed. We don't want to drain our stores. And that's why if you have inflammation ongoing every day and behavioral aspects or one that are contributing to inflammation, you're depleting your cortisol on that end too. And so when you get both sides of it, mental stress, physical stress, and then the environmental stress, or all three sides, you're just draining your cortisol reserves. So naturopathically, we will help you replenish your cortisol reserves so that you have this healthy morning rise and evening calming, and that you have fuel in your cortisol tank.
Yeah, because it's all about that, like having the right amounts at the right time of day. So in the morning you want it to be higher, not too high, and then it's the day you want it to go down. So speaking of how to manage cortisol levels, so that's all about bringing in those parasympathetic calming activities. So the fight or flight nervous system state, which is when cortisol is produced, the opposite of that is the parasympathetic, which is the rest, digest, and heal state. So when we're in that parasympathetic calming state, that's what's going to lower the cortisol levels. So again, it's not that we don't ever want to be in that fight or flight, because we are designed to be able to do that. Like, you know, as we are putting up a presentation and there's technical issues, we are probably like that cortisol is firing, and that's great. That gets us through it. But then afterwards we need it to come down, and we need to restore the system. So there is a little tool that we wanted to bring up today, because we had chatted, again, maybe it was yesterday or the day before, about how when you look out at a horizon or a sunrise, that opening that peripheral vision really helps to bring you into that parasympathetic mode. So what you can do is use like a pen or a finger in front of you. And then if you stare directly at that, so you're focusing your attention onto your finger, and then you look at the wall behind and you kind of expand out your vision. And that expanding and that peripheral vision can help to activate that parasympathetic state.
It's such a great tool. We can do it right now.
Yeah, it's something you can do anytime.
It's the sunrise example. A sunrise calms you because you're looking at the periphery, the whole picture. But you don't have to be looking at a sunrise to do that. You can do it in your office or in your bedroom whenever needed. Just feel that shift. So everybody practice that right now, of looking at your finger or pen and then looking at the wall behind you, and just feel that. It's almost like you sink back in and take it all in.
And something like that is so good to have as a tool in kind of your back pocket to like for in the moment high stresses. And then it's also about refilling your tank daily. Like Dr. Tara was talking about, we want the reserves to be high. So it's bringing in any type of calming activities on a more consistent basis. So whether that's going for a walk outside in nature, having a hot bath, like just something that kind of helps to build up those stores for you.
Then we want to touch on insulin again. And so insulin is released from your pancreas every time you eat. So when you go to bed, remember your digestive system shuts down and your pancreas actually stops secreting insulin at that time. And so insulin helps you absorb the glucose from your blood. So when you eat, the food goes in as glucose actually to your bloodstream, and then it's the insulin that helps bind to the glucose in the blood and carry it into your cells, to your muscles, to your fat. And so I think of insulin as the bus driver in a way in your bloodstream, just picking up the glucose to take it to where it needs to be. And I find actually a condition of blood sugar imbalances is diabetes, as you know. And it's kind of like when you're eating, the glucose is staying in the bloodstream. There's not enough insulin to get the kids to school, right? So that too much blood sugar staying in the bloodstream versus getting into the cells and to where you want it to go, that's the problem. And that creates oxidative stress and inflammation. And so we really want our insulin working well to help with our blood sugar regulation.
Yeah, and what's interesting, so we know that there's going to be certain foods that trigger insulin more, right? So or maybe trigger it higher. So things like carbohydrates and sugars break down fast. But really, anytime you eat anything, just the action of the stomach like growing and those kind of like the like mechanical sensors and things like that is going to produce some insulin. So it does stay elevated for 2 to 3 hours after eating. And again, that prolonged insulin release is going to lead into more body fat storage. So really like the key takeaway here is that insulin is working for us, like it's meant to be there, but it's just remembering that it is good to have those breaks. To allow the insulin levels to then decrease. So we talked a lot about in the time eating window, that if you do that overnight from dinner until breakfast the next day and you have quite some time in there, then that gives a chance for the insulin levels to come down. And then same with during the day, like if you're that's why we don't want to graze all day, just because every 2 to 3 hours, you're constantly then going to be releasing the insulin. So just having a bit of a break, eating a really satisfying meal, so then you can go a few hours until your next one.
And look at that timing, 2 to 3 hours. Think of our exercise we gave you of 3, 2, 1 sleep. So 3 hours before bed, you stop eating, right? Or try to. And so it's really helping make sure you don't have this rise of insulin at the wrong time when you want to be focusing on your energy on repair and recovery and restoring versus processing glucose. So
yeah, and the other thing I wanted to touch on too was the circadian aspect of the insulin as well, which I think we maybe covered on day 2, but just as a reminder that we actually produce more insulin and we're more sensitive to it earlier in the day compared to later in the day. So that's why it can be actually more beneficial to be consuming those types of, even the more carbohydrate foods in the morning, or just like at least you're having foods during the daylight hours when your body's more sensitive to the insulin.
Mm-hmm. And someone asked a great question on the Facebook page, which is perfect to bring up now, asking about adrenal fatigue and fasting in the morning. And she'd heard that this is not good for adrenal fatigue. And so it really has to do with cortisol and insulin. So remember, when you wake in the morning, you want to have the highest cortisol to manage to get up, get going, get moving. And cortisol is actually a glucocorticoid, as we said. So it's a sugar molecule in a way. It's giving your cells, your body, the resources to manage. And so if you have insulin dysregulation, and then you have lower blood sugar in the morning from this insulin regulation, then you also have low cortisol, you really don't have any reserves to get going in the morning. And so it's not that fasting's bad, it's that your insulin cortisol rhythm is off. And you want to bring that back into play. And so you do it carefully and gradually. You don't want to stress your system. We've emphasized, we want you to listen to your body rhythms and know what feels good in your body. So knowing if you need food earlier, or if you don't feel right, if you have a heavy meal later, which we don't want you to do that either. But just understanding insulin, blood sugar balance, cortisol production, it's connected. DHEA. This is the mother of all hormones, also progesterone, right? So DHEA and progesterone are the top of the hormone cascades. Progesterone goes down your calming pathway to cortisol, and DHEA fuels your energy pathway. So it's a precursor to your androgens, then to testosterone, then to estrogen. So this whole energizing pathway, we know testosterone and estrogen are really important. It's the primary focus for hormone balance as well as progesterone, but you also want to then backtrack and know where it all starts. And it's like one of the hormones it starts with is DHEA. It's your fight or flight, just in terms of what we said about cortisol and fight or flight. DHEA is on par with progesterone and cortisol here. So when we are overstressed, over fighting, over flighting, we get low in cortisol and low in DHEA.
And then, because it's interesting the relationship within the DHEA and cortisol, because DHEA is produced in the adrenal glands like cortisol. So part of the time it's helping to kind of like buffer the impacts of cortisol because it's anabolic. Like we talked about how cortisol is catabolic. But because it's this precursor that's then going to testosterone and then going to estrogens, if that's low or high, it just gives us a picture like earlier up in the pathway in terms of where possible imbalances could be occurring later down. So while we don't have like DHEA receptors in our body, it's still really great information for us to know in terms of that whole hormone pathway, and where there might be imbalances in it.
It's that Goldilocks effect of too high or too low. So if you're too high in DHEA, it can signal there's an androgen problem. There's there's over stress, it's like over cortisol, over DHEA, too high, but it very quickly goes too low in that aspect. And we often see in practice, when we look at DHEA, if a person comes in at a 2, that would be very low, right? So they have low reserves moving down the pathway to their other hormones, to testosterone and estrogen. But sometimes we see really high, especially in cases when there's acne or
PCOS,
hair or polycystic ovarian syndrome. So the too high, too low aspect of DHEA is really important to look at.
And then so that leads us into testosterone. So remember, DHEA converts to testosterone. Again, I mean, it's like all the hormones, we keep bringing back this Goldilocks effect because it's just important to remember that there's an optimal balance for all of them. So we don't want any of them too high or too low. So with testosterone, we really think of it as promoting muscle growth, motivation, drive, which when it comes back to metabolism, we know that building muscle is really important. And also like having the motivation and the drive to exercise and to do things that, you know, make you feel good. Because when you're low in motivation and drive, it's so hard to, even if you know that there's something that's going to make you feel better, whether that's exercise or how you're nourishing yourself, like it's so hard to do it when you're feeling really low in those levels. So the picture of too high ovulation, so something similar to like polycystic ovaries, acne. If it's too low, we see low libido, low motivation, low drive, low energy. It's not just a male hormone, so it's important for the women too.
Mm-hmm. And what's one way you can augment your testosterone? That line. Through. What's one way you can activate your testosterone?
So resistance training. Okay.
Did someone say that, or are you saying it?
Oh, I did. Sorry.
I was just wanting people to see if they wrote it in the chat line. Yeah. So, and yeah, resistance training to boost up get your testosterone going.
Yeah. Oh, there was a question about normal menopausal numbers for DHEA. So there is a range definitely in menopause, and DHEA becomes important because, or not becomes, like it is always, but because it's kind of that pool that's then helping to then go down into the testosterones and estrogens, which we know can be lower in menopause. So we do, in menopause, I am kind of shooting still for like the mid, like high range.
So around so a range would be about 2 to 9. Female, this is the blending of female male, but I feel around 5 is good. Anytime you're getting 3 or 2, it's just starting to get too low, and it's a signal to that of low DHEA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I missed a comment too here about do smaller meals produce less insulin? And so the amount of insulin based on what you're eating will definitely change. So the point was just that like any meal is going to produce some insulin, but based on how that meal is broken down or what's in it, that's going to affect how much insulin is actually released. Mm-hmm.
And
okay, so with estrogen to start off with. So estrogen as well, so what I see a lot in practice is if it's too low. So this is in like perimenopause and menopause. This is when we often see estrogen levels going down, and estrogen really does have an impact on our body composition. So when we're younger, going through puberty, it really encourages fat gain in the gluteal femoral region. So the like butt, hips and thighs area. And then when we lose it, that's when it can encourage that fat deposition more to the abdominal region, which is definitely not where we want it, because it's more of that visceral fat as opposed to the subcutaneous fat.
Mm-hmm. Reminding you about this estrogen progesterone balance. So in your whole hormone cycle, there are times in the month where, and menstruating and non-menstruating, mm-hmm. Or menopause based, and sorry, men, this does not apply to you here. But you have your dominant estrogen in the first 2 weeks of your cycle. So day 1 to about midway through, that's your estrogen curve. And the second half of your cycle is the progesterone curve. And so what we find is stress depletes that cortisol progesterone piece first, which causes this relative rise in estrogen. And then as you go into menopause, then estrogen's decreasing too. And so then it's kind of like you're just raw on all the hormones. Then symptoms arise from that, of just not having that hormone stimulation. And so the balance of estrogen and progesterone is really important. And there's still ways to increase these hormones even in menopause. Reminder too that men don't think of estrogen as just a female hormone. So as we said, for males, testosterone is also, testosterone is also a female hormone, and then estrogen occurs in men as well, and you don't want to be too high in estrogen. As men age, they convert their testosterone too quickly to estrogen, so then they're feeling the low testosterone symptoms. That could go to women as well, that you're metabolizing testosterone to estrogen too quickly, so you feel estrogen dominant in the face of low progesterone, and you can also be just too deficient in testosterone. So really that understanding of flow of testosterone to estrogen, and then on the other side, progesterone, and it's a balance of all of them. And anything else to say here, Kira?
Well, I think we're going to show now the, like, how we can kind of go more into the estrogen metabolism. Okay, so.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, it's introducing one of our favorite tests we've mentioned. So the Dutch hormone test, it stands for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. That's what Dutch stands for. And yeah, we're just showing you page 1 overview. And Kira, you go into the specifics.
Yeah, so we'll go through a couple pages with you guys just to give you an idea. But this is one assessment tool in terms of ways to kind of assess your hormones. So this would be the summary page. So you'll see at the top, the dials are showing where, so in a premenopausal range is going to be between the yellow stars, yeah, in the green, and then the postmenopausal range is going to be in the purple. So we'll see here is just a summary. We're seeing the estrogen levels, the progesterone levels, and the testosterone levels. So in this example, we're seeing that estrogen is kind of just above mid, progesterone is quite low, and testosterone is just below, kind of low mid, I would say. And then the adrenal hormones is beneath that. So what's really cool here is it's really mapping out that cortisol pattern. So it's showing how it is at waking, morning, afternoon, and night. And here you'll kind of see how in the morning, that's when cortisol is the highest. You wake up and then you want to go up high, and then it's just going to kind of go down later in the day. So we're able to see here that on waking, it's a little bit at the low end of the range. The curve is good though, like it's going up, it's going in the right way. So it's not like a flipped curve where it's high at night and low in the morning, but it's just a low amplitude. Like the afternoon and the evening is quite low. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, we're just seeing the total DHEA production. So that's including all of the different, a bunch of the different androgens there, and then the metabolized cortisol and the free cortisol. So the metabolized cortisol is kind of showing the total cortisol production, and then the free is what's actually available at the tissue level. So the metabolized we're seeing is on the higher end, and then the free is kind of mid to low.
And so overall from this case, what we see here is that what we would zone in on is the progesterone cortisol pathway here, because this person is quite good in the estrogens and testosterone, and sure, you can augment those as well and optimize, but the real area to zone in on would be this person's progesterone, and then also improving the cortisol curve even further, because we know that progesterone and cortisol are going hand in hand. And this is really fascinating. I did this test myself too, and just to say a flip, I've done it several times. I did my most recent one after a significant period of stress, just to see how my body responded to that stress. And so what I had here was I was making a lot of cortisol, but I was down here for the metabolized. And how I look at that is I was making cortisol, I was keeping up, but I was really running on fumes. I metabolized to the point where I didn't have anything left. I needed more from here. So really like burning the candle. And it's interesting to see that on paper, to know, okay. And then to be more connected to your treatment plan, and then to repeat and make sure you've adjusted those levels. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
I was just going to say that this is another page which further breaks down the metabolism of all those hormones. We kind of have 3 main sections. So in the top left, you'll see the androgens. The top right is progesterone, and then the big one is the estrogens there. So we can just start with the progesterone on the top. So that's kind of showing how it breaks down to the alpha and the beta pregnadiol, and then on the left, we see the DHEA, which then goes down to testosterone, which then we see then converts over to estrogen. So what's interesting about this is that we can see whether there's kind of a breakdown in the estrogen to testosterone conversion, like whether that's an issue there. And then same with how the androgens are actually metabolizing down. So whether they're going through the 5-alpha or 5-beta pathway. The 5-alpha tends to be a bit more androgenic. So that's kind of like if women experience, hair loss or acne, like things like that, that can show up in that area. And then the one that provides so much information too is the estrogen metabolism. So going from E1, E2, E3, and then we go through phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. Do you want to go through those ones?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of our liver metabolism in the 2 phases, this pie is really interesting. So there's what we call, in a very simple term, good estrogen, bad estrogen. And so the good estrogen we want is this 2-OH. I lost my mouse there. The 2-OH, and then we want to be lower in the 4-OH and 16-OH. So this is great, very dominant in that 2-OH, which you want to see between 60 and 80%. So this person is at 84%, so even higher, which is even better. And then the 4-OH and 16-OH, so these are showing quite low, which is good. Sometimes we see this elevated, and it just is a sign of where we want to work specifically in the liver. And
this 4-OH is quite high.
Sorry, yes, and it is a little bit elevated. So it should be between 7.5% and 11%, and it's sitting a little higher at 13%. And then the 16-OH is quite low, like lower than what we typically see. A little bit of flipping there, and liver pathways, working on those, getting them working in the right order, the right rhythms is always a good thing. And so on this page, it's like a quadrant. We have our androgen quadrant, progesterone quadrant, estrogen quadrant. And then the 4th quadrant is down here, and it's called, I call it your methylation activity, which is, resume share. Is it back?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Oh, no.
Now it went to the end thing. Okay. Okay.
We only have a few slides left.
Is it the main title page showing?
Yeah, it's the main page. I don't know, went back to page 1. Because even if you can go down to the slide, we don't have to have it in presentation mode. I mean, it's, as long as you guys can see that, okay.
There, it's back.
Oh, perfect, great.
Okay, so this methylation marker is your ability to detox. And so this is showing quite low on the methylation aspect, and we want it to be mid-range or higher, which helps with your estrogen metabolism, which will help with this pie. It will help make sure you don't have high oxidative stress in your bloodstream. So this elevation here of your liver enzyme and your estrogen metabolism, if it's elevated, which it is in this person, then antioxidants, glutathione, working on that pathway is really important. Working on simple B vitamins can also augment this level. And so we'll be retesting on this one because we've done a treatment protocol specific to this, and it'll be really interesting to see how this methylation component has improved and how this pie has improved.
Yeah, it's just interesting because if you're having issues with the estrogen detoxification, which is so common with people or their estrogen levels, we can see whether it's a phase 1 issue in the liver or a phase 2 issue. So it just kind of breaks that down, because you might not have it. You might have an issue with both, none, or one or the other.
Yeah, and it's making, as we're going through this, I hope you're finding it fascinating. Like, if we definitely simplify it down, it just gives us so much information to go on to know where to guide your treatment. This is one of my favorite aspects of the test. So getting into the neurotransmitter component and the nutrient levels. So looking at your B12, which would give us some more information about methylation. Looking at your B6 levels, which gives us more information about even your antioxidant pathways, and your glutathione. We love glutathione here. We talked about mother of all hormones. Glutathione is the mother of all antioxidants. And your antioxidants are just so important in your body for keeping inflammation low. We also brought up that your mitochondria, as you're producing energy in your cells, you're creating oxidants. So making sure your glutathione or your antioxidant pathway is working well is key. And here we see a low glutathione level. So we certainly want to be raising this. And by raising this and working on the right antioxidants, that will also help the methylation marker. Dopamine is measured in this, so we can see dopamine is low on this test report. Dopamine is like your testosterone of neurotransmitters. So testosterone, your hormone, dopamine is your neurotransmitter, and they're buddies. And so dopamine is your drive, your energy, your motivation, much like testosterone. Stress depletes dopamine, stress depletes testosterone and all of your hormones. And so this pathway is showing low, that we would go in addition to addressing progesterone, cortisol, we're really going to work on building the tank here. So, so that there was reserves of dopamine as well. And then this norepinephrine, sorry, one more thing, this norepinephrine, epinephrine is a metabolite of dopamine. So these two markers flow. It's like testosterone to estrogen, dopamine to norepinephrine. And so both of them are showing low.
And then we love the melatonin marker here, right? Just because it's hard to test melatonin. Like, it's such a rare thing that we do, but this really gives us, we can see in this one in particular, we're seeing that the melatonin on waking is at the low end of the range. And because of all of the antioxidant benefit of melatonin and the circadian rhythm benefit, so we know that here we need to work on melatonin. So whether that's with the light, the dark, the sleep, or supplementing with melatonin based on what would be best in this case. And then there's an oxidative stress marker. So this is giving us an idea of, this is within range. This is a good, it's a good result there, but it's just giving us an idea of how much oxidative damage there is, which we talked about just from a cellular health perspective, and maybe a need to bring in antioxidants and whatnot there. So it's just giving us a good idea of that.
And so those two markers, so melatonin, oxidative stress. So we talked a lot about the antioxidant benefit, and glutathione as your master antioxidant. So this person is low up here, but their overall oxidative stress is still low, which is good. So they're not in the chronic, we can fix it, we can repair. If we started to see this number rise, so to get above 5, that would now show there's actually damage happening with that high oxidative stress. So what we want to do is just really augment this glutathione aspect. We want to increase the melatonin from both a hormone benefit, but also the antioxidant benefit. And it's a great thing to know in your body. And this person is actually quite excited to do melatonin suppositories, and we're going to retest. So I'm really, it'll be really interesting to see how that corrects the level, not just of melatonin, but how it repairs this glutathione marker.
Great.
And how do we put this all together? How do we build your action plan? We created a program called the Hormone Harmony Program, and we create your blueprint for hormone harmony. This is individual to each person. There are, as you've heard here, all throughout the 4 days, there's just a lot of differences or a lot of areas where your hormones can get affected. It's really important to know where we want to come in at. And naturopathic medicine, our key is really working with you, coaching you, helping you understand all the pieces together, and helping you understand your blood work, understand your Dutch test results, understand your eating patterns, your mindset, how everything's connected. So in the first visit, we call it your onboarding hormone consultation. It's like your initial, for anybody who hasn't seen us before, it's your initial naturopathic consultation. For existing clients, this is really our main, we're going to dive into a focus on your hormones and really pull in different pieces that haven't come up yet. And we hope these 4 days have given you further questions, further ideas for us to talk about, because there's so much to go through. In the first visit, we take a deep dive into your complete hormone health, into all other health concerns too, because they're interconnected. So digestive, your sleep, your mood, your stress levels, your work environment, your family history, medical history. So this is really our taking the big picture of your hormone health.
And a big component of that is proper assessment. So we really make sure that we're getting to like the root cause of what the imbalances are or what the concerns are. So this is always individualized. Sometimes we'll recommend blood work. So we talked about thyroid today. So thyroid blood work is always great to run. It needs to be run in blood work. Some other really important markers are assessing for insulin, blood sugar balance, lipid levels, inflammation, vitamin D, of course. Vitamin D is like the most important blood marker to run. But we'll kind of assess what would be most appropriate for you. And then any relevant advanced assessments. So that could be something like the Dutch test, which we showed you, the dried urine test. As naturopaths, we have access to other more deep dive tests to help us, like whether it's a digestive concern or something like that. For hormones specifically, we love the Dutch test for the information that it provides.
An important aspect is nutrition, and we call it our rhythm undiet. There's no meal plan in this program. It's really about honing in on the timing of your eating, your consistency, your circadian aspects, to really it's not about what I mean, it is and it isn't. We want to focus on the when of what you're eating and just really getting into rhythms of the when.
Yeah, and we get really excited talking about like supporting the hormone phases. So, you know, if you are in that menstrual cycle, and then we talk about menopause too, in terms of the moon phases and whatnot, but we have that follicular phase from your period to ovulation, and then the luteal phase from ovulation to your next period. And as an example, in that luteal phase, it's really important to have complex carbohydrates. And then we talk about seed cycling and things like that. So just, we're excited about kind of bringing in the nutrition piece to affect hormone, to support hormone phases, any focus areas. So whether there's, you know, if there's lactose intolerance or nutrient deficiencies, high cholesterol levels, all that kind of stuff can be addressed. And again, it is that undiet micronutrient approach.
Mm-hmm.
And then another aspect too with naturopathic medicine is targeted nutrient supplementation. So, you know, it's not about coming in and taking like 100 pills by any means, but it's really about, once we assess and we determine kind of where is your body out of balance, what support does it need, then we can bring in the relevant nutrients, antioxidants, maybe herbs and adaptogens, like whatever it is, it's going to be very specific and targeted to help you bring that body back into balance and feel better as well.
Mm-hmm. People often ask, am I going to be on these supplements all like long term? And absolutely not. We're nudging your body back into balance, nudging the rhythms. And sometimes certain things do continue, but it's not we take your health at the stage you're at. And so it's, how can we nudge you back in that stage? And then there's going to be a new stage, you know, so it's constantly listening to your body and tuning in and teaching you how to do that. And we are not big supplement naturopaths. You're not going to be on a barrel of supplements. It's about what is needed to bring you back to balance. A big part of what we do here as well at Higher Health is intravenous vitamin therapy. So this is nutrient therapy, really speaking to that cellular aspect of your wellness, and going to the understanding that we are all trillions of cells. Every cell in our body uses basic micronutrients, and those basic micronutrients and then the cellular function is what guides your hormone balance. And so we want your cells really working well, having the fuel, the simple fuel they need, so that they respond to environmental cues and rhythms and food choices and everything. So your body is working with you. We love intravenous vitamin therapy for this aspect of supporting the cellular health and your hydration levels, which actually help you respond better to all of the other things we're talking about. We've created a new menu, or a new offering here, which is our IV push menu. We have IV drips and IV pushes, and the drip can be a much longer treatment, so from half an hour to an hour, whereas this new push aspect allows us to help support nutrients, support metabolism, but at a much less time. Not that the drip is time consuming, but sometimes, you know, there isn't enough time in a day, and just having even a little bit of a boost is great. And so the pushes are less than 5 minutes, and where people are really enjoying this aspect to cleaning the body, bringing in the micronutrients, knowing they're doing more for their wellness to get their rhythms back in check.
Mm-hmm. And then a big component is the one-on-one coaching. So that support. So, you know, we'll meet up like 2 times a month so that you know that we're there for you, and we can kind of work through any of the challenges that come up, or more support around nutrition or any of the other things that kind of come up with life, right? Because it's not about changing everything in one day and everything changes, but it's kind of like rolling with everything that comes at us and kind of adapting as we go to make sure that we're creating a long lasting plan, and that support and that accountability is there as well.
Yeah, it's like repetition, holding you accountable, championing you. Different things come up throughout the weeks, and it's just having that sounding board, having that base, having us as your coach, really keeping you on track, moving you through all the stages is so empowering. Working on your mindset, really helping you make sure it's all coming together in the midst of the chaos around us and family pressures and different work-life balance aspects, just holding you to your best. Going back to the original start of this plan, is your best nourishment, right? Mind, body, and cells. And then a really great component of this is the group connection. In these presentations, we haven't been able to see you. We see you in the chat line.
We feel you.
We want to work with all of you visually and in a group setting, because a group has power and energy, and all kinds of questions have come up, and one person might have a question that leads to another person's question, and learning together, there's just such a great power to that. And so in this blueprint for Hormone Harmony, or our Hormone Harmony program, there's a group connection point where it's a certain aspect of online meetings. You can join them or not, but having that group connection brings such a value to this whole program. It's a 3-month journey with us, and we will be sharing more about that with you. We just wanted to highlight some of the key aspects about this, about where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to our foundations. This is your action plan that you can take today. Take this approach and start working with it and see how it evolves for you. Mindset, our favorite heart of health area. What is your mindset of wellness? Start talking about it, not just in your mind, but with your family. You're at dinner. Hey, feeling your best. What does it look like for you? What does it feel like, and where are you at? How are you feeling now? Not to get too feeling oriented, but just create an intention for your wellness, for yourself, for your family, for your coworkers, your friends, to let's just shift ourselves to that more empowered state. Also, part of your mindset is your quality of sleep, which is a primary, effect of your rhythm. So when your sleep is off, it's just a sign that your whole body is off in ways, and then we help nudge you back, and sleep is a great way to bring you back on track. We talked about melatonin, progesterone, your evening cortisol, and your parasympathetic state. Remember that finger exercise, or looking at a sunrise, or just when you're eating, just sit down and get into that parasympathetic state.
Yeah, and then movement was another big component too. So just thinking each day, like, how am I incorporating movement today? We really touched on mobility exercises versus exercise versus rest, because yes, sometimes rest is part of that movement picture. That's what's needed. There's a couple of other things that we love for movement as well. So acupuncture is something that we do a lot here in the clinic, especially for, as we talk about getting into that parasympathetic state, that relaxation, plus it brings body, the different organ systems and hormones back into balance too. So many benefits from that. Massage is great for that. And then we touched on the different hormones too to consider. So we went into estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, insulin, thyroid, and liver health. And then the last, so it's the MMM, mindset, movement, micronutrients. So we chatted about assessment, and then when is so important about eating. So it's not just what and how is also important too, but when, that's what we really focused on. An anti-inflammatory approach, that hormone rhythm approach, and then the importance for cellular health for metabolism. So bringing in things like the IV therapy, the IV push, the red light, things like that can support you at a cellular level.
Blue light and white light too.
Yeah, all the lights.
Yeah, actually, and you can, all of this intertwines, much like your hormones and everything. Acupuncture is also great for mindset. Your hormones are all moving through your body, your micronutrients. So this is all interconnected, but we hope there's a bit of structure here for you. Start with mindset. What are you doing movement wise? What are you doing micronutrient wise? And a simple goal for the day, like if you do this on a daily basis, which we coach you how to do, it could be, today I'm going to drink chlorophyll water, or I'm going to make this comforting progesterone complex carbohydrate nourishing meal because I'm in my progesterone phase. So it's really fun when we get to this, applying this personally and getting the right assessments for you and really customizing your care plan. We from the bottom of our hearts and our hormones wanted to thank you for going this journey with us. It's always a challenge putting our care onto a paper and presentation and without having that one-on-one interaction. And so, our hearts have been racing through this, and there's so much more to share with you about this. So please connect with us individually. Everyone has an offering to do an complimentary intro session with us, where we can just recap the week and see what you took, see what your questions are, and then guide you a little bit further.
Yeah, it was so great. All the connection as well, like the engagement in the chat while we were doing this and on the Facebook group, and even emailing in. People have been emailing in, which is so great. It's really what's fueling us and feeling like this community is coming together. And we just hope to share our love of hormones and micronutrients and cellular health and all of that, so that you guys can feel really empowered with your health and just feel really good in your body too.
So let's go to the questions. We'll pan out, and we're still here. We can stay on and so if anybody has to go, and then otherwise we'll touch on these questions and for a few more minutes, and then afterwards as well.
Oh yeah, here is a question about having thyroid removed. They take Synthroid. Do I still have a metabolism? So yes, because Synthroid is giving you T4, which converts to T3. So it's giving you that thyroid hormone. And then a partial hysterectomy, but still have your ovaries. So when you have your ovaries, then you still are able to produce those ovarian hormones as well.
And there's a question about a vibration plate. Absolutely. A great question.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding that in. So we didn't even think about that, putting the presentation together, but we're a big fan of that. It gets movement going and flow. Absolutely. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, someone asked about purchasing the 200 milligram melatonin suppositories. And I think those have to be like at a compounding pharmacy, right? Like a prescription?
Yeah. Yeah. We would go through, first we'd want to have a signal that your melatonin levels are low. And then so that something like the Dutch can help with that, or sleep disruption, and knowing you're responding well to an oral melatonin. And then we basically write a script for it for a certain amount of days. And we give you the dosing for how often to do it. And it's very unique to each person. So yeah. I've had to increase my levels with supplements to increase my sex drive since I've entered menopause. So sorry, I've had to increase my testosterone levels. Well, we hope that what we've talked about is giving you an understanding of why, where it's going low, how it connects to the whole pathway, how it does flow into estrogen too. And, for this person, the Dutch test is just really helpful to understand which aspects of your whole flow are going low and how we can augment the pathways. Not just a simple, just increase your testosterone dose. Let's look at the whole picture and help the flow to testosterone.
Yeah, and another question on testosterone too, can facial hair growth be from too much testosterone? And yes, absolutely. So that can be a sign of high testosterone. It's like the hair thinning on the head and then the hair growth on other areas. I don't know if you've read this, Kara, sorry, because I'm focusing on other questions. So I have no signs of menopause, hormone levels still high. We haven't touched on that, have we? I haven't read that, no.
Okay, so hormone imbalances, all my adult life. So they're saying their hormone levels are all high. Hormone imbalances my whole adult life. Searching for answers. How does obesity affect my hormones? Okay, so obesity, first off, inflammation, right? So inflammation is causing you to overuse your cortisol, then you underuse, you have no stores left of cortisol, but yet still really high inflammation. It's going to affect your insulin levels, your ability to bring glucose into the cells. All of that is then going to play into your other hormones, setting up high estrogen, high testosterone certainly can happen, we've said, and that it's really about the balance between estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and cortisol, and the whole harmony or symphony of it. That's important.
Yeah, and a huge piece there too is that actually testosterone gets converted to estrogen by aromatase, like an enzyme in the fat tissue. So with high fat tissue, that can increase estrogen levels as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And then adrenal, what do you ask your doctor when you want to test adrenals? Oh my gosh, okay, really good to touch on this, because my doctor knows I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I said, yeah, what do you think of adrenal fatigue? And she said a lot of patients come in and say, oh, I have adrenal fatigue, and she specifically said it's just not our medicine. It's not what we address. A medical doctor will address end stage adrenal problems like conditions such as Cushing's or Addison's, but they're not looking at that spectrum of surplus or depletion or how you're responding to stress at a physical hormone level. And so it may be hard to get your doctor to understand adrenal testing. simply you could say, I'd really like to understand my cortisol levels further. And then from us that you need to test that in the morning and the evening. So it gets challenging to go to the lab at both times of the day. We tend to shy away from blood cortisol testing, actually. I like to ask for DHEA. I have heard back that medical doctors say, oh, it doesn't give us anything. So it's just two different perspectives of medicine and what we look at, where Dr. Kier and I would see information can be gathered from that DHEA level. And then there's other ways to assess your cortisol outside of blood work. So the Dutch we're talking about, I don't think we highlighted enough that it's the dried urine test. We said it, but just to reiterate. So it's not blood work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a question here about testing cortisol, so I think we answered that. And the doctor ordered a 24-hour urine collection for cortisol level testing. So that is, they will often do that, so they can actually, when they're assessing more for those real like cortisol, like whether it's an excess or a deficiency, they want to measure it through the whole day, which is more accurate than that just doing a blood test. But that's not what we're assessing here. Like, we're really looking at more a functional approach in terms of how are your adrenal glands functioning, how is your cortisol functioning. So that's kind of,
and it takes a lot of symptoms and disruption to get your doctor to do that kind of test, the 24-hour urine. So everybody can't go in and ask for that. It has to be very specific. It's like right now, vitamin D, it's a really important marker to look at, but it's not covered under OHIP. Only if you have certain conditions that apply can you get it covered under OHIP. And so if everybody could go in to their doctor and get every single marker they wanted and every advanced test, we can't do it with OHIP costs. So really matching your needs and what is available to you.
Yeah. So I think that's everything. So yeah, thanks again, everybody, and keep the conversation going. So we'll still be on the Facebook group over the weekend, or send us an email. Again, it's hormonechallenge@higherhealthcenter.com.
We're keeping this community going. We're here for you. We posted up a few other tracking handouts, and then just stay tuned for more coming as we distill this knowledge for you. So think of us, your Hormone Challenge team, and let's keep the community growing and working together on these important aspects.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, everybody.